Welcome to the Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson. The Morning Report is a production of FightBackMedia.com, 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 and FightBackMediaTV.com. I trust that you are well this glorious day. It is, what is today? Today is the 14th of March. Tomorrow will be the Ides of March, which just means the middle, 15th. The S&P 500 is up 1.82%. Now, can we trust any of this stuff? Because the market is up. Can we trust any of it? Is it just theater before? Well, it's not good. Keep an eye on it. I'm not going to fill you with a lot of fear because that's not what we do. But keep an eye on it. All right. Three things today. Joe Biden believes that what's going on in Florida having to do with the mutilation and the giving of gender-affirming care with kids in Florida, as his mother would have said, his dear old Irish mother would have said, Catholic mother, was close to sin. You gotta listen to that, and I'm gonna play that for you. Gretchen Whitmer admits that her, and I think she's probably ready to take her crown off as queen dictator. That maybe some of the things that happened in Michigan were more than needed. Again, the rest of us were saying that all along. That's this. No, we will not comply because what you're doing is stupid. Not that we won't comply just because we're non-compliers. No, what you're doing is stupid and unnecessary. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll close with: is President Trump done? This video, and we're going to play it, and I guess it got put up on Truth Social because Truth Social still doesn't do Android. What's that tell you about the veracity and the efficacy of Truth Social? It's a small club, and they want it to remain a small club, and maybe this is why. I'm going to show this video, and then we're going to have this talk. Is it time now? Because we are here, and we are the Morning Report. This is Fight Back Media, and I'm Willie. Is it time to have this discussion? Is it time to move on from President Trump? Is it time to thank him for his accomplishments and his sacrifice to his country? And then is it time to move on? Some people plant the seed, some people water it, and then others, reap the benefits. Well, we're going to find out. Going to show it all here on the Morning Report, a production of FightBackMedia.com, 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 and FightBackMediaTV.com. We'll be back right after these messages. So is it okay now, because it was, during the Trump administration, it is okay to talk about the president's...
yeah. We talked about mental health elderly, so let's talk about this guy mental health.
The president's mental acuity, because there's sometimes where it seems to be lacking. Have you seen...
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes it's especially bad. I'm talking about sometimes it's like really bad. Like, have you seen the picture?
I was told not to take any questions.
I was told not to take any questions. They're going to be mad at me.
They're going to be mad at me.
Mr.
President, are you the president or were you five?
You see, what I want... See, the next question is... excuse me,
I was told to call on what you call for NBC. Who's telling you to call on?
That's the question that we ought to be asking. Who's telling you this?
I don't understand why nobody won't ask that question.
Is Jen Psaki actually the president?
Who's telling you to call on these people in the media?
Is Jen Psaki actually the president?
Probably so.
Welcome back. During an interview with The Daily Show released yesterday, President Biden criticized efforts to restrict gender affirming treatment in Florida, my home state, baby, where I'm not just my home state, where I am residing currently, where my big fat butt is sitting right now. I don't want you to think that I'm from Florida and I am pretending to be a Floridian. No, I've lived here since I was 7 years old. This and right out that window there, Florida, baby. So what's going on in Florida? The president says, as my dear old mother would say, is close to sinful. It's just terrible what they're doing. He said, it's not like a kid wakes up one morning and says, I decided I want to become a man, or I want to decide to become a woman, or I want to change. I mean, what are they thinking about here? They're human beings. They love, they have feelings, they have inclinations. Okay. And because we're going to show the video here in a second, but because they're human beings, especially when they're children, especially when they're minors, because we're only talking about minors. We're only talking about minors. We are not giving puberty blocking drugs to 8-year-olds or to 6-year-olds. No, not at all. Not at all. Not going to do it. Because they are human beings, because they are loving, caring human beings who have feelings and inclinations. And inclinations. When you're inclined to do something, that doesn't mean that you want it. It's just you're thinking about it. You're mulling it over. And I'm going to say this, and this may get me in trouble with the YouTube censors, is that you are, just because you're inclined to, a lot of times you don't. And with transgenderism being nearly faddish now, I mean, you got everybody is on the spectrum, right? That's what they're trying to tell us. Everybody's on the spectrum. From bi, through gay, through pans, through trans. Everybody. They want you to believe that everybody's on the spectrum, and that cis is over here, looking in, judging, and on the spectrum. And they want you to believe at the same time that you are on the spectrum somewhere. You're just in denial. So he went on to argue that the efforts to restrict treatments are, quote, cruel, and that federal legislation is necessary. So is the president suggesting that there should be federal legislation to force states and doctors to give puberty blocking drugs and treatments to mutilate perfectly healthy bodies because someone says they feel a certain way or has a certain inclination? And the way, apparently he is, and the way we do this is that we make sure we pass legislation like we passed on same-sex marriage. You mess with that, you're breaking the law, and you're going to be held accountable, he said. Here's a video.
Transgender kids is a really harder thing. What's going on in Florida is, as my mother would say, close to sinful. I mean, it's just terrible what they're doing. It's not like, a kid wakes up one morning and says, I decided I want to become a man, or I want to become a woman, or I want to change. I mean, what are they thinking about here? They're human beings. They love, they have feelings, they have inclinations that are, it just, to me, is, I don't know, it's cruel. And the way we do it is we make sure we pass legislation like we passed on same-sex marriage. You mess with that, you're breaking the law, and you're going to be held accountable.
I'm not sure that there is legislation. I know there's a Supreme Court ruling which is not legislation, by the way. What? Supreme Court rulings are not legislation. Legislations are laws that get passed by bodies like the Senate or the House, whether it's at the federal level or the state level or the county commission or the city council level, city council or city commission, or however y'all do it. But there is court cases that went to the Supreme Court. That's different. Now, I'm not sure whether the president is thinking about taking this sort of stuff to the Supreme Court, but he needs to pack that court first, which they are planning, to get this sort of thing to be the, quote, law of the land. We live in a sinful, fallen world, friends. We live in a sinful, fallen world. And we're seeing more and more of it every day. All right, we'll take a little break. We'll be back with more of the program. Well, hey everybody, my name is Willie Lawson, and you guys know that I do a lot of stuff on the internet, and you may think with what's happening on Twitter and what's happening on Facebook and what happened to Parler that the mainstream social media sources are really trying to rid themselves of conservative voices, and you'd be right. They most certainly are. But you know what? It isn't as bad as you think it is. It's worse. But there are people who are willing to be platformed for free speech. One of those places is freedomforum.website. Freedomforum.website. You can go there and speak your mind. So come join us. Enjoy the freedom. Enjoy the fun. If you are a true blue conservative, small businesses are near and dear to your heart. They are the lifeblood of our life and economy. I believe this, and that's why my florist is not a website or phone number. My florist is Bloomingdale's Flower Shop, Tampa's premier flower shop. At 11618 North Florida Avenue here in Tampa, Florida, and at 6835 State Road 54 in Newport Richey. Call Christine at 813-933-1942 and at 727-232-6900. She can also be reached on the web at www.bloomingdays.com. One of the things that I get asked most is where can I get information that is not tainted with liberal bias, especially here in the Tampa Bay area. Well, now I have the answer. tbctampa.com, a website by and for Tampa area conservatives. Tampa's leading conservative voices speak freely at tbctampa.com. And you can too. So join the fun and enjoy the freedom at tbctampa.com. My name is Willie Lawson, and this is the Morning Report. So, welcome back. You know, past few years we've gone through as a nation and as individuals, we've gone through a lot, and a lot of what we went through was COVID. And I'm just now, quite frankly, feeling okay. I'm moving my throttle quadrant for my flight simulator because it's in the way. I'm just feeling comfortable with even saying the word COVID here on YouTube because, well, they would, or Facebook, if you said the word COVID, you could just say COVID, 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 COVID. They would slam a tag on the video, and basically only me and my mama, and she's been dead since '83, would see it. So I'm just now feeling comfortable saying COVID-19. But during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, Michigan had some of the most restrictive policies in the nation. Not only were there many of Governor Gretchen Whitmer's orders, frankly, ridiculous, but they were also completely arbitrary. It's like she woke up one morning, and the Queen said residents could enter hardware stores, but they were prohibited from certain aisles that sold gardening supplies. Were these test runs for other policies? You can go so you could go to Home Depot, because a lot of us during the pandemic were at Home Depot and Lowe's. I learned Lowe's during the pandemic, to be honest with you. I learned that store. We got bird feeders and all sorts of stuff at Lowe's, and during the pandemic, shop for patio furniture. I learned Lowe's during the pandemic. So you could go into Lowe's, but you couldn't go into certain aisles that sold gardening supplies, for example. You could enjoy the Great Lakes on kayaks, canoes, and sailboats, but you couldn't use jet skis and motorboats. Okay, so you could just go and paddle on Lake Superior in your kayak or a canoe or a sailboat, but you couldn't use jet skis. Arbitrary or test runs or other restrictions. And forget about traveling to any second homes. Under her mandate, not allowed. If you had a second home somewhere, no, couldn't go there. She wanted to keep you right where you were. Now, 3 years later, Whitmer has finally admitted that in hindsight, what was obvious to all the rest of us at the time. Here's what she says. There were moments where we had to make some decisions that, in retrospect, don't make a lot of sense. They didn't. Gretch, they didn't make sense then. They didn't make any sense then. The governor told CNN of the garden supply restriction. You could go into a hardware store, but we didn't want to encourage people all congregating around the garden supplies. Like they weren't all congregating around the hammers and the screws and the plumbing. A lot more people were congregating around the plumbing, Gretchen. Although I know you've probably never been in a Lowe's, probably never been in a Home Depot. You probably never touched a hammer. You couldn't tell a hammer from a screwdriver, and you couldn't find your, and I love this phrase, I'm going to say it again, you couldn't find your ass with both hands, flashlight and a team of search dogs. So you didn't. So the idea is they didn't want people congregating around the garden supplies because people were just all over each other getting that perfect trowel. Okay, in the garden section of Home Depot and Lowe's, I'm going to show you a picture. If I remember to show you a picture, you know what they look like. That's what they look like. They're outside. Anyway, Whitmer added before addressing the criticism, people said, oh, she outlawed seeds. Well, she did. Because if the seeds are in those areas, then people can't get to them. It was February in Michigan. No one was planting anyone. This is why this wasn't arbitrary. This was a test run. Michigan, you are the guinea pigs. And I know that sounds all conspiratorialist. It sounds all Glenn Beckish. Glenn is weird, but as we're finding out, he wasn't always wrong. That being said, some of those policies, I look back and think what was me a little bit, and think back that maybe was a little more than we needed to do. A little more. A little more. As Twitter users pointed out, however, Whitmer's timeline is inaccurate. The state's first stay-at-home order came in March of 2020 and was extended on April 9th with stricter orders for stores that remained open, which is when carpeting, flooring, furniture, garden centers, plant nurseries, and paint areas of the stores were closed off. Let me take that again. Carpeting, flooring, furniture, garden centers, plant nurseries, seeds, and paint areas of hardware stores were closed off, which is incredible because as we were stuck home, a lot of people worked on their houses. I told you, we did. We actually got a new couch the first day of the stay-at-home order, of the first day of 15 days to flatten the curve of that BS, which was under the administration of Trump. Gotta say it. Again, Fight Back Media, Morning Report, Willie Lawson. Gotta have discussion, folks. Gotta be realistic about this stuff. Kira Davis comments on Twitter. Question: if it was February in Michigan, no one was planting anyway, then why did you need to ban garden supply sales? Answer: you're lying. It was April. I mean, if the idea is if no one's planting anyway, then why people weren't congregating around garden supplies anyway? Because it was the dead of winter and the ground was hard as cement. She's lying, and they continue to lie. Who was it? Andrew Wilmer tweeted, Of course you would lie about this. It was the dumbest restriction in a time of dumb restrictions. Why do so many politicians find it impossible to say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake? Peter Mazur tweets, the gaslighting here is simply breathtaking. The orders, multiple, were late March, early April, not February, and were so unclear that some stores put caution tape around entire aisles to not risk non-compliance. A bit of humility would be nice. They're trying desperately to cover up the poop. It's part of this idea of this whole forgive us for COVID and these restrictions, COVID amnesty. We didn't know. We were just trying. We were afraid. Or maybe they were just using that time to test run a whole bunch of stuff on us. Thank you, Michigan, for being the test dummies. Thank you, Chris Ann Hall, for We Will Not, from the non-compliance movie. It's the second non-compliance movie. I'm going to try to put the link, if I remember, the link in the description box. You can check that out. All right. Remembering This is Fight Back Media. This is the Morning Report. I am Willie Lawson, and we will have these discussions. For those of you who commented on the video before last, and who didn't agree with me, you saw that I didn't fight you. I didn't take down your comments. I let you comment as long as it was respectful. And we're going to do the very same thing here going forward. Take a little break. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back. This is going to be tough for a lot of people. This is going to be hard. Really hard. Hope you're ready. There's a video on Twitter from Trump 2024, Make America Great Again. You can text Trump to 88022 and you can give him money. Where the president talks about, I'm not going to tell you what he talks about. I'm talking about something else. I'm going to tell you that it may be time, or is it time? This is the discussion. This is the discussion that the adults need to have. This is a discussion that the adults need to have. Is it time to move on from Donald Trump to the next thing? Donald Trump is a guy who, at the time, I believe, frankly, was perfect for the time. Perfect. In 2016, to stop Hillary Clinton, yes, absolutely perfect. It was funny, my neighbor asked me if this whole Trump thing was serious, and I told him, I said, and now he believes me when I tell him stuff. I was like, my neighbor is he's not a card-carrying socialist or anything, but he's an old school liberal for sure, sociology major, that kind of deal. Older fellow, lovely family. He asked me about the Trump thing, and I said, if Trump survives until January of 2016, it's going to be Katie bar the door. He's going to get the nomination. He's going to get the nomination, and then it's going to be, holy crap, good luck, y'all. I've said this a bunch of times on this program. In my house, there are 3 Republicans. During the Florida primary, there were 2 votes for Marco Rubio, and there was 1 vote for Ted Cruz. There was not a vote for Trump in my house in the Florida primaries. There were 3 Republican votes in the general election in 2016, and they were all for Donald Trump. Trump won my house. So I don't want to hear from you that I was never a supporter of Donald Trump. I actually took this program, this thing, to the first Trump rally that he had here in Tampa at the fairgrounds on this random Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock. And the dude packed the place. Absolutely impressive. Absolutely impressive. And he kept packing places everywhere he went. It was amazing. It was quite impressive. And he was a master of holding an audience in the palm of his hand. He is, not was, still is. Yes. And at the time, Republicans, conservatives, libertarians, anti-liberals, anti-progressives, how about that? I'll say it that way. Needed a champion. Needed a champion who would take his sword out and poke it in the eye of mainstream media. Poke it in the eye of the progressive liberal machine that was just chomping through these people's lives. They needed a champion with a heavy sword, not a saber, but, one of them big ass heavy swords, right? And Donald Trump was that guy, like a bull in a china shop. The problem is when you have that sort of administration mentality, demeanor, not everybody on your team does, especially when you are trying to tear down the deep state. I believe the deep state exists. I believe that there's a group out there similar to B613. And if you get that reference, then you know exactly what I mean. I do. And we have to thank Trump for exposing it, that it exists. That is very true. So are you going? So you're asking? So I can smell your comments. I can smell your questions in the comments. What do I think about the 2022 election or the 2020 election? I think there's a lot of things in that election that are problematical, and I think a lot of them got exposed too. And you could tell. What's the phrase? A hit dog, a holler. When we started talking about this stuff on social media, how social media and the social media giants just shut down accounts and banned people and demonetized people and just went ape snit. A hit dog, a holler. That's what I think. So I got to watch most of the movie 2000 Mules. I did. Seems legit to me. So I hope that answers your question about that. But still, we are, let's see here, 3.5 years removed, or 6 years removed from 2016. Is it time to have a more focused approach? Now, I'm thinking, for those of you who've been around for just a little bit, I was one of the first people to speak at the first Tea Party gathering here in my town, here in Tampa. Quick detour, funny story. I was there and I was waiting to speak and was walking around, and this is when Acorn was in the news, and it was my turn to get up on the. This is obviously not the Koch brothers sponsoring us, because I remember crawling up on the back of a pickup truck, a flatbed truck actually, and speaking through a microphone attached to a small practice guitar amp, whole 10 amps. Not the best thing ever. And speaking to a crowd of about 2,500 to 3,000 people through a 10 amp, a practice guitar amp. And I'm telling you, if you know what a practice guitar amp, they're about this big. I'm not talking about a Marshall stack. I'm talking about a practice guitar amp sitting up on the back of a flatbed truck. So I get up, I do my thing, I get down, I get a hug from from someone who turned into one of my dear friends. If you're from this area, Ted Webb, who has passed away now. Miss you, Ted. Could use some Ted Webb around here right now. And there was this little old white lady there. And she grabbed my hand. Hi. I said, yes, ma'am. How can I help you? And she said, I need to apologize to you. And I said, for what, baby? And she said, when I first saw you walking around, I thought you were Acorn. I just gave her a hug and said, no, baby, I'm not Acorn. She said, you certainly are not. Love what you said. And just gave her a hug. We talked for a little bit. This is one of the funny things that it made the day. It was a long day. It was the first time that I'd spoken in front of 3,000 people like that. And so it was a little stressful for me, but it just made me smile. It made my day. It still makes me smile. I'm sure at this point this woman had probably gone off to be with Jesus, but you made my day. In case. So I've been around for a bit. The Tea Party movement was a blunt force at the time. But what needed to happen was that it needed to become more surgical. It needed to become less blunt, more surgical. And a lot of people who had gotten in, who were in positions of authority in Tea Party chapters around the country, they were blunt force people. They were just blunt force people. God bless them, because there is a time for that. Sometimes you need to hit the animal over the head with a baseball bat. You do. And sometimes a carefully placed dart is exactly what's needed. I think you know where I'm going. I think that we may be there. I think that Trump is blunt force. Absolutely blunt force. And that was exactly what was needed at the time. Maybe we can have a discussion at this point that maybe blunt force is not exactly what's needed. Let me give you an example before I play Trump's video. And we're going to play Trump's video right after this, I promise. I'm going to let you languish out there, because you could always fast forward. Give you an example. When President Trump took office, one of the first things he did was one of the first things that we hated Obama for. One of the first things that we hated Obama for was so many executive orders. Well, he's not a king. Remember that? I do. But one of the first things that Donald Trump does is that he starts signing executive orders. Seemed weirdly similar. Blunt force. Blunt force. Executive orders that could not be backed up with legislation. To codify. This is why the left was apoplectic about the Supreme Court and Roe v. Wade. Listen carefully, folks. We need to have this discussion. This is why they were apoplectic, because Wade had not been codified in law, and they'd had years to do it, and they didn't because they couldn't. So now so after the Supreme Court threw out Roe, they were trying to backtrack and get it done, but they couldn't, and still can't. What happened here in my state was, yes, my governor signed executive orders, but at the same time, they were cooking up legislation to codify those executive orders moving forward. A lot more surgical. There weren't leaks. There wasn't big changes, turnovers in personnel. No, as my governor says, no palace drama. Zero palace drama, actually. So maybe it's time for that. I don't know. Let's have the discussion. Let's get out of our feelings. Let's get out of our loyalties. And let's have that discussion. All right, here is the president's um, speech, and I'm guessing it was on Truth Social, but it ended up on Twitter.
For those of you that didn't notice, Florida was doing great long before Ron DeSantis got there. People are fleeing from New York to Florida and other places because of high taxes and out of control crime. It's really bad. Not because of the governor. Thank you, Mr. President, for doing that. But it's not because of the governor. Florida was doing fantastically. You had a governor named Rick Scott who did a very good job. Even Charlie Crist, a Democrat, did a good job, and he had very good numbers. Sunshine and ocean are very alluring. It's not too hard to work with those factors. So just remember, Florida was doing really well long before Ron DeSantis got there.
Tell you in 4 years, you didn't see our administration leaking like a sieve. You didn't see a lot of drama or palace intrigue. What you saw was surgical precision execution, day after day after day.
Wow. So if you're of the mind, and especially, my viewers, my followers, followers, people who not following me anywhere, my subscribers who live in Florida and have lived in Florida for a while. If you think that DeSantis is not special, even when it comes to Rick Scott was blunt force. If you remember that, a lot of us were around for that. Rick Scott was blunt force. Took a chainsaw and a hammer and a chainsaw to what was then the establishment Republicans here in Florida. Rick Scott took a chainsaw and a hammer, looking like Skeletor, and just tore the whole thing up. But who had to follow? Something a little bit more surgical, right? And for Trump to say that Charlie Crist is in the chain of successful governors in Florida. Florida survived despite Charlie Crist, because Florida is Florida. With all due respect, Mr. President, you weren't living here then. You were vacationing here then. I guess Mar-a-Lago was open. I don't know. I've never been invited, and this will ensure that I will never be invited to Mar-a-Lago or to any Trump property. I remember there was at one point a property here in downtown Tampa that was supposed to get the Trump name that failed miserably. And Trump decided that he was going to take his name off the property. It wasn't his people building it. He was just going to add his name to it, sort of like naming rights to a stadium. So it wasn't his failure. I want to get that right, because I know some of y'all go, some of your keyboard warriors are going to be all over it. It wasn't his failure, but he decided to take his name off of it. I guess I'd have done too. So it didn't look good. He picked a losing horse, which all of us have done from time to time, I guess. But that was during Charlie Crist. And Charlie Crist was a medium successful governor. If I had to compare the careers of governorships from Charlie Crist and Bob Graham, who was a Democrat and just turned into a flaming progressive, as far as their effectiveness in Florida, I'd have to give the nod to Bob Graham. Old Frying Bob cranked up a death penalty in Florida. Sure did. Spinkalink in the electric chair. Signed a bunch of death warrants. Revived the death penalty in Florida as a Democrat. So if I had to judge the careers of governors between Charlie Crist and say Bob Graham, even Charlie Crist is a Republican and Bob Graham, I'd give a nod to Bob Graham. So this whole idea that what Florida didn't need right now was a Ron DeSantis or a more surgical approach, like I described before, without the palace intrigue. I don't know if I agree. Is it still time for more blunt force? Or is it time for a more surgical approach? That's for you to decide. Write down in the comments, like I know you will. Remember, be calm, be respectful, be thoughtful. This is just discussion, a discussion that we have to have. It's hard. It's going to be hard, but it shouldn't tear apart families. I would hope that we are a family, or growing, our friends turning into family. And it shouldn't tear us apart. Should actually be able to talk about this in a way that brings us together. My name is Willie Lawson. This is the Morning Report. The Morning Report is a production of fightbackmedia.com, 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 and fightbackmediatv.com. Until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We'll see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.